Welcome back, everybody, to me talking about Wheel of Time, and this is week 3 of the Wheel of Time thing. That means book 3. Yes, that's right, we're starting to talk about the Dragon Reborn today. And yeah, I think I'll be done with this one in 4 videos, so ideally, I'm recording this on Monday, so I guess you'll see it on Tuesday morning because it takes a while to render and edit and whatnot, and my Tuesday morning. And I guess I'll be done by Thursday with recording videos, so ideally I'll do something else on Friday. We'll see. Anyway, this is about the prologue all the way up to and including chapter 14, The Bite of the Thorn. Yeah, once again, thank you for those of you who have stayed with me through 2 Wheel of Time books already. Thank you especially to all of you who actually enjoy Wheel of Time and still actually watch me being angry about it mostly. I do have good news for you. There's stuff I enjoyed in these first couple of chapters of The Dragon Reborn, and we'll talk about that as well today, so maybe something positive. Anyway, thank you to all of you. I think I've sort of stably crossed the 700 subscriber mark now, and yeah, if you enjoy what I'm doing here, please do the usual YouTube stuff, the liking, subscribing, commenting. In particular, commenting. I love to talk to you. I know I've not always been good with answering to comments, but I think I'm getting the hang of it. I'll try to do it even more in the future. So if you feel the urge to tell me how wrong I am with one of my takes on Wheel of Time, feel free to yell at me in the comments, and we can sort this out. And I'd be happy to talk to you there as well. Anyway. Once again, thank you, and let's get started with some reborn dragons and shit, right? Well, cheers. All right. Now, we have to start with something that I don't enjoy too much. And that's the prologue, which I was not a fan of in a lot of ways. We'll talk about some of it, I guess, in the future, when I know more about these damn white cloaks. But we start out with a lot of white cloak stuff going on. And, yeah. That's a problem insofar that I still think the white cloaks are fairly boring, or I like the idea, but I feel the way it is handled of them being religious fanatics or whatever you want to call it, would call for some more nuance to be more than just a bit of a boring, they feel like movie Nazis at this point, just dumbly following orders and believing they're in the right, even though they're maybe not, but I assume there will be more stuff coming, because we finally find out who our man who calls himself Boars may just be, which is that one Inquisitor, who's obviously not an Inquisitor, but not even a questioner. I've forgotten his name again. That dude from the prologue. That's the guy from the other prologue. But now we get his perspective as a white cloak. That's sort of what we want to talk about in a bit. There's another thing that I find interesting there. You remember last time, like a couple of weeks, last week at some point, I called it super unrealistic that the White Cloaks, being apparently like the bully boys on the entire continent, still don't actually run their own country. Well, seems they were trying to do that, and it kind of didn't go well because of certain dragons doing their thing and other stuff happening down there on Toman Head. But they're trying again now. So there is the idea of the White Cloaks trying for world domination. Apparently they just needed all these centuries to build up their power base. So for now, I'll leave it at that. We'll see. As I said, I don't want to be too cruel to Robert Jordan here. I think he doesn't understand politics or how to write politics properly, but maybe he'll figure it out over time, so we'll get more information on it then. That's sort of my hope here. We have a bit more of the whole child bias thing, and we'll see where that is going in the future. I mean, I do see the idea that Jordan is going for here, which is, I mean, a lot of this series so far seems to be built on miscommunication and misunderstanding. And while that is certainly something that, drives a lot of real world shit as well, if handled too in your face, it can, and too often, happens too often in a book series, it can become tedious. And Robert Jordan may not have yet crossed that line with me, but I'm certainly noticing that it crops up an awful lot. And so the idea of child bias being so blinded by his fanaticism that he doesn't understand, or that bit is there, but once again, I feel it could have been handled more delicately, more subtly, because the idea is like the theme, or the general theme and idea that if we follow a very, very rigid code of, or a rigid ideology, whether it is a religious belief, and for want of a better word, I guess what the Children of the Light are doing is sort of religious, even though there's no worship and whatnot. It smacks of religious fanaticism in a lot of ways, or it is some other form of ideology. There's tons out there, whether it's some esoteric beliefs, New Age beliefs, political ideologies, all of that stuff. If you follow a specific worldview strong enough, and it dominates your brain or your mind and your being, enough, then there's a very good chance, well, not chance, but it's basically what will happen is like everything you encounter, you will interpret according to those, to that ideology, to those dogmas that you have, ingested and that are so deeply ingrained in your brain. And that's certainly something that we can see with child bias. There's like, yeah, but there's Aes Sedai, so any woman that casts magic, well, channels the true source, I should say, is obviously an Aes Sedai. Everyone opposing the Children of the Light has to be a dark friend. There's no other alternatives in his brain and his worldview. And that certainly is something that we can see in other places as well. So, yeah. I just feel the way that it is described with child bias, with whatever his name is, bias, is once again, Robert Jordan is fairly on the nose there. It's the description of the characters, their appearance is always that way, that you can fairly soon tell what kind of thing Jordan is trying to do there. There's no subtlety in characterization in these books so far. And at this point, I'm not sure if that will ever really happen. But yeah, once again, the idea is good, and I that's okay. We'll see how far we can go with this in the future, especially since we now know, and we kind of knew since last book, that there are actual dark friends among the White Cloaks. So how will, at some point when they find out that part of their organization is actually compromised, how will they deal with that kind of thing? Because that will automatically lead to, or should lead to, some questioning of those rock-hard beliefs. And that's sort of when we'll see how much Robert Jordan can actually pull off as a writer, if he tries hard enough, I guess. So we'll see how that will be when it happens. So far, it hasn't happened. Two other things, however, they have, when we talk to them being compromised, one of them is obviously that Padan Fain, under a new name, is hanging around in the palace and talking to our good buddy Niall. Yeah, the overlord of the Children of the Light. I forgot his title. It's Lord Marshal Commander, First Class Supreme Over Honcho. I have no idea. That guy. Niall, I think. And how do we know it's Padan Fain? Well, he has a hooked nose. A huge beak of a nose. And, yeah, we kind of know it is him. So I'll just, mention it that, every time that dude shows up, we get his nose shoved into our face, basically. I'll just mention it when it comes up. My criticism remains the same. We'll see. Anyway, he's there and has a new agenda with the Children of the Light now. Where will that lead? Who the fuck knows? However, what is interesting, and this is sort of what I need to talk about as something that I don't like so far, and that is when we have the Murderers show up and talk to our boss Inquisitor there. Because evil, well, I said it before, evil has no style, but evil also makes no fucking sense in this world. What do I mean? Well, I mean, there is obviously Baalzamon, the Dark One, whatever you want to call him, and if for whatever reason he wants to turn the world into a terrible place made in his image. So far we have nothing of this. I mean, let's just take this. This is a fantasy world. Maybe there is a supremely powerful being that thinks turning everything into shit is actually a good idea. Alright. However, why do so-called dark friends work for the dude? And that's something that I've wondered myself all the time. This is sort of like the bigger criticism of, or turns into a bigger criticism of the book so far, is how empty those words are, their catchphrases, because we don't know why any of those dark friends works for evil. We found out that those dark friends tend up to be eaten by Trollocs. They get pushed around, punched, threatened, and whatnot by Murdrol. They still do it, but for what fucking reason? I mean, if dark friends were smart, they would form a union and go on strike at this point. It's like, workplace safety is non-existent, you get eaten. Etiquette is horrible, the way your superiors and middle management, if we want to call Murdrol middle management, talks to you is absolutely, you don't want to do that. Wages suck because no one ever gets fucking paid in this job. It's like, why would anyone do this and keep up with that shit? It doesn't make any sense, which, kind of dovetails with my general criticism of the Dark Friends being, the whole, evil in this book being super fucking cartoonish and unrealistic. So yeah, and now you will probably say, but Raph, they all want power. To which I say, yeah, what do we mean by power? Because that's the big problem that I have with Robert Jordan's writing so far. He's a master of dropping catchphrases, of dropping buzzwords. It's like fantasy buzzwords, obviously. It's like, yeah, they want power. What does power actually mean in this world? I mean, for those that we've met so far, is it magical power? Well, maybe for the Black Agi. Just fucking maybe they can, actually... I don't know. I doubt it, because looking at it, does the Dark One being depicted as male have power to actually do anything or help them with their ability to channel the One Source? We don't know. I know there's the Forsaken, and there's obviously female Forsaken. We've already met Lanfear, I guess. So yeah, maybe he can help with power, with magical power there. But most of the Dark Friends we've met so far are not women. Most of them are dudes. They're not all wielding the one power so far. At least we've not seen any guy do that apart from Rand. And, well, Logain, I guess. Although we've not seen it with Logain. We've heard about those. And those are not Dark Friends. Neither Logain nor the other, False Dragon was officially a Dark Friend. They were just, False Dragons, so to speak. So maybe no, magical power. Does it give them, monetary power, make them rich? I don't know. If Padan Fane, Dark Friend for 40 years, doing unspeakable things after those 40 years, is still working as a fucking traveling merchant with one wagon? Maybe two, but I think it's only one wagon. I mean, no, if that's all your reward for working for the Dark Lord, then maybe you should find a new employer. That just doesn't sound really because there has to be some sort of temptation, right? Quick riches, quick power. Because if after 40 years working as a peddler, I'm still a peddler, why would I actually sign on with the Evil Corp? That doesn't make any sense. And we've never even met. It's never even mentioned that it's monetary power or power over people, because he doesn't have power over people all the way until later when he gets touched by more death in Moria. I mean, in Shardar Logoth. until then, he does not have power over any people. No, he's pushed around by Murdroll, made to sleep in a fucking Trollocs cauldrons. Like, once again, it doesn't make any sense for anyone to actually work with evil. Because so far, we've not seen any of those Dark Friends have any motives. They're just like Dark Friends. I mean, the only one, I guess, who has had a motive to sign on with the Dark One, even though it didn't make any sense, was Ingtar. Yes, Ingtar was a Dark Friend, and he did that because he wanted he wanted Shintar to have the respect and like the permanence that it deserved, so he did it out of like love for his country, I guess. Why signing on with exactly the power that is trying to destroy your place would help, your home country is unfortunately not really explored. But maybe Robert Jordan knew why. I don't think it's realistic, but who am I to judge? But that's the only Dark Friend so far that had any motive, like outside of we don't know. And that's the problem. We're 3 books into this thing at this point. We need to have some motivations for people to actually do that shit, because for all we know so far, being a Dark Friend sucks ass. And yeah, what is it? And like, once again, like the idea of like it being power, maybe there is such a thing. He never defines what he means by power at all, which was already the problem with that dumb Game of Houses, or whatever it's called, the Great Game in Kainaran. Is that what that town was called? You know what I mean. Kainar, that's it. Anyway, those people, it's like, yeah, they're playing the Game of Houses. It's for power. What kind of fucking power? Do they all want to be king? How do you become king in that country? By killing the other dude and making yourself king? We never get any explanation for that. It's like, yeah, they're playing it for power. Yeah. I don't know. For all I know, power at this point could be like a fucking battery. And that's it. Yeah, that will give you power, but is he paying them in fucking batteries? I have no idea. And it bothers me. Because we're already 3 books in, and I would like to have some reason why people work for the Dark One. Like humans. I mean, Murdroll and Trollocs probably have like very little choice in the matter, but why do people sign on with the Dark One? Please fucking tell me at some point, Bobby J. I would very much welcome that. So yeah, that's for the rant so far. And yeah. We'll see where all of this will be going in the future. Maybe we'll get some more nuance there. So far, I'm despairing. Now, let's get to some more okay-ish things, I guess. And there's some inconsistencies that I don't like, but there's also good things going on there. Right? So we start out up there in the mountains with our good buddies, Perrin and Rand and Min and Moiraine, whatever, and Lan, and, those people. They're hanging out in the mountains trying to hide. Because, whatever, it's winter and, doesn't matter. And there's conflict there, and at some point Rand pisses off because he thinks he has to do something, and then everyone runs after Rand, and that's sort of as far as I got today, basically. Now, what's interesting about that and what is not so interesting? First interesting choice is that so far we have not gotten Rand as a viewpoint character. That's a fascinating choice. Or like, not fascinating choice, but it works because actually Perrin is a much more interesting character than Rand is. So that's pretty cool. We have some interesting, there's 1 or 2 things that I want to look at. One of them is the wolf thing, which has good aspects and bad aspects. And then there is obviously Min's ability to look into the future. I mean, we kind of already know that Min is sort of like a Cassandra figure. Her predictions are come true, but no one actually believes her. Or like most people don't believe her, and she can't actually change the future. That's cool. There's like this little thing with the Tuaton woman, Leah is her name, right? And she sees her that she's going to die, and then we actually have that scene where she strikes her head and bleeds in her face, and then there's that short idea of maybe that's what Min saw, but then it turns out obviously that she dies anyway. That's an interesting small bit there where you can see Robert Jordan trying to play with the idea of like, what does actually, is there such a thing as predestination? Is fate, and is there such a thing as seeing the future? Prediction. Is that possible or is that not possible? And are things inevitable or not that someone like Min sees? That's, that was actually neat. The end result of it, you can't do shit about it, so well, what's her like predictions worth anyway if you can't change them? Is obviously a question that we have not that is not explored here, because it's difficult to do that, and we'll see. I guess it will be addressed later on, but so far it's not actually addressed. But I did like the way he does that. It's like, that's neat, with like, oh, maybe that was it. So yeah, pretty good. The other issue, however, that I want to look at is, Rand is apparently not happy with what Maureen wants with him, and then he just runs away because he has dreams again, because everything happens through dreams in these books, everything important, and we never get like a full explanation for those dreams, and it's usually just our good old bully boy Baalzamon behaving like a dickhead in dreams. But, apparently there's now more different people showing up in dreams, which, that's nice. And the wolves are showing up in Perrin's dreams. And that's sort of where I want to look at now, is the whole wolf thing. So, and there's cool things in there, and then there's something where maybe I missed something, or or it is just my theory that Robert Jordan is readjusting some things now. So let me explain. Right at the start, when Perrin feels those wolves in his mind, he tries to shut them out, and it's made clear that he's afraid that the wolves will take over and he will lose his personality. And that's a cool idea that, and it gets later explored when they come to the village of Jara, and they meet Nom, whatever his name is, where the personality, like the human personality, has completely been overwhelmed by the wolf thing. The wolf mind, so to speak. And it's made clear that, yes, that can be the fate of people that can speak to wolves or talk with wolves or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, that's a really cool idea. However, it is introduced in a weird way, because we first have, like, Perrin already fears that at the beginning of the book, which feels the wrong way around, because in the last book, right, in The Great Hunt, he uses it. He's afraid to tell anyone that it is his wolf ability, but up to this point, it's always like implied that he's afraid to tell anyone, because he thinks or feels or believes it may be very similar to actually channeling the true source, and he's afraid of, being burned at the stake, killed by white cloaks, all these other things that happen to male channelers and anyone with supernatural powers. The same as our good sniffer Huron also has that idea. It's like he doesn't want to talk about it to people that might do him harm, because there's a lot of superstition when guys have unexplained powers. And that's sort of the implication with Perrin and his wolf talk ability. Google Trends Wolf, or whatever it's called. Anyway, that thing. And that's fine. And that's believable. But now, at the beginning of the book, suddenly he's afraid that the wolf will take over. And that was never mentioned before. And I just feel it could have been handled better if we had like some form of hint before that he has that feeling when he lets the wolves in, that they may overwhelm him. And it could have, for example, in that one scene when he lets the wolves in Eye of the World, when he kills people with the axe, when they're like, run over by Bornholm and his gang. Or later on in Great Hunt, when they're running with Ingtar, and he's like letting the wolves tell him where to go and whatnot. It's like that there is that urge that he should like give up his personality and let the wolves run in. But until then, it's always implied that he's just like among equals with them. They call him young bull and so forth. So it comes out of the blue, and it feels like like Robert Jordan figured out that he needed to have this like threat to Perrin there, that he might lose his personality. Because now we have the same sort of thing going on with all three boys, right? We have Matt, who loses his personality to the dagger from Shadar Logoth, will be taken over by the dagger and Mordeth. And Rand, who will go insane because he channels the one power, Sidene, whatever, that thing. I'll still confuse those. Anyway, he channels and will become insane and lose his mind and personality. And up until this point, Perrin was just, had cool wolf powers and might get burned for it, but that's about it. And there was no hint, for example, with Elias. Not even Elias mentioned anything like that before. So it feels like Robert Jordan figured out, like, holy shit, I need to give some more existential threat to Perrin. So he adds that bit in, and then explains it later on when they meet Gnome and have that whole conversation. But it feels the wrong way around, or at least it could have been foreshadowed in a proper way in those two previous books. In a way that would have made it much more, much cooler and much. It would have felt better to me, I think. So while the idea of losing yourself to the animal, it makes a lot of sense, and I like that concept. And, it kind of connects to all kinds of other, like, mythologies of, like, running with animals. You have the whole, like, borrowing thing with Terry Pratchett, which is a similar idea, right? Well, it's a different idea, but it kind of goes also to that thing where you may actually lose yourself in that, animal's mind. And I guess you can draw parallels or can make the argument that George R. R. Martin did probably get some inspiration from this for Bran and his connection to wolves, but he may, for all I know, he may have actually told people that in some interview that I haven't read, but it feels like that. Anyway, so the idea of people riding the minds of wolves and communicating is cool. And the idea of being overcome by the animal and having this whole, like, will I lose my humanity to the beast kind of thing going on is really cool. It just, like, the way it's introduced feels a bit weird. And that's something that we'll come back to in a minute. That I feel there's a shift in tone that was not foreshadowed or implied by the last book, and that is suddenly there, where I'm like, it feels like Robert Jordan had some ideas, changes of heart or whatever between books 2 and book 3, and now there's this, like, break, I guess, in tone in a way that I've noticed there, or some characters behaving different than they did before. Case in point, what happens, because, there's, like, not that much to talk about the White Cloaks and everything happening around Rand, and we're going to talk about Taviran relatively soon, I guess tomorrow or so, because I don't feel like it today. But we need to talk about the girls, because that's sort of like, where we end this, right? Perrin and Moiraine and Loyal run after Rand. Rand runs probably to Tyr to get that weird glass sword. Min, who definitely is hitting on Rand, and whether she wants to or not, we need to talk about that idea later on as well, has to go back to Tarvalon to tell anyone what happened, and then we switch to the girls. Elaine, Nynaeve, and Egwene, with Verin and, Matt and Huron for some reason. So yeah, we come to the point when they reach Tarvalon. We know that lots of stuff happened while they were away. They show up at magic school, and they get, cussed out by the Amelin seat, and then they get rewarded. And, yeah. Two things there. One thing, it's all told from Egwene, mostly told from Egwene's perspective, except for one chapter that's told from the Amelin Seat's perspective. And yeah, the whole structure of them showing up, they did something wrong. Well, technically not wrong, because they were like lured away by the Black Aja and the Andron and so forth. So they get cussed out in public, but they also get like a special mission and get like actually a secret reward from Dumbledore. Well, not Dumbledore, you know what I mean, right? And so suddenly Egwene and Nynaeve have to find all the Black Aja so they can be stilled. Right. Is obviously, it feels very young adult to me, like your high school or magic school adventures. Like you did something wrong, you know it's kind of wrong, but you get away with it because the headmaster, or in this case headmistress, really loves you. Or at least, you know, not loves you, but can't do without you because you're special. So you get a new mission, and that's sort of where we'll leave it story-wise with those two, or technically three, with those two at the end of it. So they get the mission to go out and hunt dark friends, and they have like these special powers from like these letters from the headmistress. So while it's not exactly a plot that I personally enjoy, I can see it's, you know, it's a standard and it's a staple of these kind of stories, of more like young adult stories, and I can, you know, it's handled competently here, so I'm good with that. So fine. What are the issues now that I have? One is, once again, with characters like Egwene and Nynaeve, mostly Egwene. At the beginning, you know, she suddenly feels like pissed off by Nynaeve, and it's fairly difficult to say when Egwene felt that she's no longer best friends with Nynaeve. But here she suddenly is actually pretty fucking cruel towards Nynaeve and pushes her and is like, oh, what do you think Moraine is doing with Lan right now? And that felt so out of fucking character for me. It's like, how did that happen? That's Nynaeve. She's sort of your best friend. She also risked her life to actually get you out of fucking imprisonment. So, and slavery. And you goad her? She's not even after the same guy as you. Maybe go and, you know, bully Elaine. That makes way more sense if you know, jealousy is the issue here. So that just felt out of character, and kind of also ran into like my impression that Robert Jordan is like did some readjustments there behind the scenes, and we're now faced with those changes, whether we want to or not, and there's no actual backward explanation of why that should be the case. But it is what it is. So yeah, a bit awkward, a bit weird. Then there's another inconsistency that maybe I missed. I mean, I know that Nynaeve was using magic powers to blow up trees and shit. We saw that at the end of the Great Hunt. And we saw the same with, obviously, Egwene. So Nynaeve did it by herself, because she was always trigger happy, I guess. And Egwene learned it, or was trained to do it, by the Seanchan. Seanchan? You know, by the Seanchan. So I get that. But in this scene, Elaine's also doing it. And Elaine never used her power that way before. At all. But it's like implied that she also learned back in Volmar. And maybe I've missed one scene, which is entirely possible. Or it's once again one of those inconsistencies where maybe something got cut. Or he figured like he needs Elaine also to do that kind of thing, so he just hopes we don't notice that he'd never actually explained how she learned how to get, you know, how to blow shit up. I don't know. Once again, it feels a bit like this is a continuation of the Great Hunt, but with all the changes that or all the things he forgot to actually do in Great Hunt, just assumed as having happened. Not the best look. All right, and one final thing that I find very interesting, we'll see where this will go, is the temptation of using the true source, both with Rand and with the girls. There is that implication that it is very much like an addiction. You want to do more and more, and if you overdo it, it'll probably kill you. So the addiction metaphor is a very interesting one. I wonder if it will be explained further and where this will lead, because the magic power actually does something positive, at least supposed to do something positive, but there is that negative stigma of it being addictive going on at the same time. So yeah, That's pretty cool, and we'll see where that goes in the future. It has a lot of potential to be really interesting and something that I personally like, but it also has the potential for Robert Jordan to do a Robert Jordan and deal with it in such a crude and ham-fisted way that it will really, really annoy me. Which one will it be? I guess we'll find out in the next couple of chapters, which I'll be talking about tomorrow. There's obviously more that I just forgot, but I've been ranting for a while now, so I guess I'll cut it here and try to insert everything I forgot today in tomorrow's video, when we'll talk about the next couple of chapters of The Dragon Reborn. So yeah, have a great start to your week, and see ya. Cheers.